I just killed that thing.
Killed it? You only made it worse.
What are you talking about?
Percy, when you cut off one Hydra head, 2 more grow back.
We're foot slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boots, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 6, 7, 11, 5, 9 and 20 mile today. 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before. Boots, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Don't look at what's in front of you. Boots, moving up and down again. Men will go mad with watching them, and there's no discharge in the war. Try to think of something different. Oh my God, keep me from going lunatic. Boots, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Count the bullets in the bandoliers. If your eyes...
Jordan Peterson speaks often about slaying our proverbial dragons. A righteous and much needed message nowadays. But I believe there are some of us that were raised under more unique circumstances. In this existential war we call life, sometimes our demons are less like dragons and more akin to Hydra. The heads grow back and tend to bring more with them. A few weeks ago, I spent the weekend with my dad and his family. These particular days inspired this first video, as they expose many of my own personal issues. Frankly, seeing a sociable, functional family, functional household was low-key painful. I wasn't as sociable as I would have liked to have been because I really don't know how. I had no point of reference. I don't know where this social anxiety stems from. If it was my upbringing or the fact that I'm on the autism spectrum, perhaps both. Either way, the majority of my social interactions up to now have usually ended pretty awkwardly. Thus, I spent a lot of time studying and used this as an excuse to isolate myself in hopes of alleviating my anxiety and hoping my countenance wouldn't ruin anyone's day. Also, while there, I got maybe about 4 hours of sleep a night because I've been dealing with somnophobia for years. I'm not quite sure the source of it. It can stem from being molested at the age of 4 in the middle of the night. It can stem from my nights recovering from appendicitis, in which I dealt with excruciating pain, vomiting bile for the better part of a week, hallucinating about the afterlife, and lying in a hospital bed, confronted with life regrets, yet having no power to do anything to change it. It could just be the fear of missing out, or hell, it could be all of the above, which is, I guess, the linchpin of this video, the main point I want to get into here. Gentlemen, when you explore the dungeons of your mind, expect the dark corners to have dark corners. And know that the enemy within you tends to be multifaceted and have many heads. When you when you think you solve one problem, I think many of us have gone through this. You think you've gone over an issue, gone past an issue, and it tends to resurface and exposes a deeper problem. We're thinking on this concept. I looked up the mythological Hydra to see how it was defeated in mythology, if it could ever be defeated or has ever been defeated in mythology. And from there, I came across the story of Hercules. In Greek mythology, Zeus became enamored with a mortal queen by the name of Alcmena. While her husband-to-be was away at war, Zeus took on the guise of her fiancée and seduced her. The goddess Hera grew to hate Zeus for his constant infidelities and grew to hate the fruit of his actions, namely his bastard children. More on that later. Hera places Hercules under a curse of madness that causes him to delete his wife and children. And to atone for his actions, Hercules sets out to perform 12 labors, 12 tests of his strength, cunning, and heroism. For the sake of this video, we're going to focus on the second trial, in which Hercules travels to a land called Lerna to confront the Hydra, which was in fact one of Hera's pets that she specifically trained to kill him. Now, depending on the writer, the Hydra can have anywhere between 3 to 9 heads. But in either description, among these heads, there's one that's larger than the rest, and it was immortal. When Hercules confronts the Hydra, he has to cover his nose and mouth because the Hydra is very toxic. His blood and his breath are very poisonous. As Hercules engages with this serpent and begins to swing his weapon to severs the heads, he's shocked to see 2 heads grow in the moon that originally held only one. Realizing his fight is futile, he seeks the aid of his nephew Iolaus. Iolaus receives inspiration from Athena and decides to aid his uncle with a firebrand. So this time, as Hercules slices a Hydra's head, Iolaus will cauterize the open wounds. And this strategy proved to be very effective. The head ceased to regenerate. Hera, livid at the sight of Hercules and his impending victory, she sends a giant crab to attack Hercules as well. But this has little effect. He stamps the crab with the heel of his foot, crushes it immediately. When the heroic duo are left to the last head, they find that the final head is indeed immortal. No mortal weapon can cut it. Luckily, Hercules has a secondary weapon, a magical golden sword given to him by Athena. The divine magic of the blade allows Hercules to sever the final head. As the Hydra bleeds out, Hercules dips the tips of his arrows into the serpent's blood, making his arrows poisonous. Now, again, there's multiple versions of this tale of Hercules and the Linnaean Hydra. I've taken bits and pieces from different interpretations. I think they all offered something of you. And from a psychological standpoint, especially from the view of Black men and our struggles, several things really stood out to me. The Hydra was released into the world by Hera, a vengeful and petty woman that hated Hercules before he was even born. High abortion rates, anyone? I've observed many Black men have grown up questioning their sanity, and some of us even struggle to trust ourselves. More often than not, the cornerstone of this cognitive conflict stems from the unwise assumption of good faith. This system has indoctrinated Black women to cherish their personal freedom above all else, including the lives of their own children. Since the 1970s, Black women have consistently had the highest abortion rates in this country, reaching over 127,000 in 2020 alone. Brothers, this system attacks us before we even leave the womb. If you're in the lucky number that even survives, that makes it out into the world, we're left to the whims of our lovely ladies. Many of whom are not acting in good faith. Black boys will be subjected to a range of malice, from tearing down his self-esteem by bringing up his past failures, no matter how small, to using him as a replacement husband, essentially taking his childhood from him, to having his academic future stolen from him by placing him in special ed for a government check, to scarring the boy's psyche with physical, mental, emotional, and sexual abuse, to training him to become a pro bono mercenary, to avenge whatever imagined slight the mother can conceive, thus grooming him to become a cog in the prison industrial complex, if not for an early grave. Black men, we've been through a lot, have taken a lot of damage. Despite these truths, there are many, including our own lovely ladies, that would say we single-handedly destroyed the Black community. But understand, we did not send the Hydra to learn them. Hera did. Book of Numbers 14:18. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love and forgiving sin and rebellion. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children for the sin of the parents to the third or fourth generation. Hercules was driven to madness by a curse Hera placed on him, which in turn caused him to delete his wife and children. Hera cursed her stepson because of the infidelity of her husband. Essentially, Hercules pays a dear price for the actions of his father. His confronting the Hydra was, again, the second of 12 labors to atone for Hera's spite. I found parallels between this aspect of the myth, and the story of life story of David Goggins. Goggins spent his early childhood being physically, mentally, and emotionally abused by the hands of his father. As he grew older, David carried toxic stress, and it affected his school and social life. The stress compounded with the sudden tragic loss of the man that would have been his stepdad, and the constant racism he dealt with growing up in Brazil, Indiana. As an adult, Goggins, seeking answers, returned to his father's home to see if the man was indeed the abusive monster he believed him to be. And within a day or so, he had that confirmed. He was indeed. But upon confrontation with his father, he realized something. Just as his father had broken him, someone had broken David's father. He left soon after, knowing that his dad was a coward above all else. On this drive home, Goggins understood that he was given a bad hand. But instead of bemoaning this truth, using this as an excuse to give up, he chose to play the hand. Gentlemen, we carry many scars, many of them invisible. Some days it's very tempting to lash out at the world or to put hands on a smart ass coworker that says and does things that trigger you from things we've gone through in your childhood. Other days, shit can weigh so heavy on you, it's struggle just to get out of bed. But as the late great Kevin Samuels said, the world doesn't owe you understanding. The Hydra is not our fault, but it is our responsibility to fight it. Hercules had to cover his mouth and nose to confront the Hydra, a very toxic and venomous creature. His blood and his very breath are extremely poisonous, thus even making his presence, thus being in his presence is potentially lethal. Sadly, this is a lot like the Black community. Brothers, above all else, survive. Distance yourself from this toxic ass culture as best you can. Protect yourself at all times. And do not allow yourself to get drawn into a stupid argument. It's not worth it. If you can legally obtain a firearm to protect yourself against those that rebuke logic, please do not allow your ego to get you killed. They'll call you corny, they'll call you a square, they'll call you a lame. Fuck it, be a living lame. Survive. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent. John Donne. Men in the Western world, and black men especially, are taught to lock away our feelings, never appear weak and never ask for help. Gentlemen, we need to fight this. We need to fight against this mindset. We are human and therefore susceptible to the same frailties as anybody else. Black men, if you're struggling in your fight, reach out to a trusted friend or psychologist. Needing help only proves you're human. And to seek help is not a sign of weakness, but of intelligence. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Aristotle. To fight this fight, We will need both strength and wisdom. Go a little off script here. In human history, there's been two major styles, major forms of warfare. From World War II up till now, the mindset has been maneuver warfare, flanking, pincer maneuvers, outmaneuver, outthink your enemy. For World War One and every war before has been attrition warfare. Those of you who've seen 300, Gladiator, the like, Spartacus, you have an idea of what attrition warfare is. You grab your men, grab your spears, grab your shields, you find out who's alpha. This particular war, I strongly believe, is going to require both attrition and maneuver warfare. You're going to have to outthink your enemy, outmaneuver your enemy, and find the strength to endure. We must strive to truly know ourselves, our strengths and our weaknesses. Understand your strengths and use them daily, as this has been proven to boost self-esteem. During the heavier days, remembering your strengths can also help you get through them. Knowing your weaknesses is just as important, arguably, maybe more important. If, for example, you know you struggle with depression or addiction, it would be very beneficial to know your triggers. Knowing the mental and emotional traps that can send you into a heavy downward spiral can greatly increase your chances of avoiding it. As the tides of the fight turned in Hercules' favor, Hera sent the giant crab to attack Hercules in an attempt to thwart his victory. But the crab was of little consequence. While he struggled intensely with the Hydra, he quickly smashed the crab. Earlier, I mentioned David Goggins' troubled childhood. Dealing with physical abuse and constant racism and bullying he dealt with growing up. David's past will haunt him until the second stint in Buds, in which one of his instructors made it a point to bully him. David's class were doing underwater drills. They were tying knots at the bottom of a pool. The instructors would call the name of the knot they had to tie, take a breath, swim underwater, tie the knot. The instructors would then swim down after him to check the quality of the knot to approve it or disapprove it. If it's approved, they could go to the top and take another breath. If not, on that same breath, they had to fix the knot. David's instructor does everything in his power, everything he can get away with to make him fail. By doing whatever he could to keep David getting the proper breath of water, splashing water in his face whenever he tried to take a breath, and moving as slow as possible to inspect his knots. One particular occasion, while underwater fighting for breath, David's intrusive thoughts begin to creep in. He begins to feel like a victim, like a perpetual failure, until he flips the script. Goggins realizes that the hell of his childhood was not a curse, but a gift. while the other SEAL probates, they began their training maybe a few weeks, few months before they set foot in Buds. His entire life was boot camp. From his first breath, he was getting trained. And this training made them harder than most men on the planet. Before this realization, before this paradigm shift, Goggins was fighting for air. Now he found himself calm and with all the air he needed. Goggins would take it a step further and use this to reverse the bullying, to get in his instructor's head and leave him struggling for air. Brothers, this is how we should all strive to view our struggles. Not as emotional burdens to carry, but as proof of our strength. When dealing with the struggles of life, it can benefit us greatly to remember our past struggles and the fact that none of them broke us. Or more often than not, you realize you've faced worse than you're currently dealing with. Win or lose, facing your inner demons will give you strength to endure and the weapons to do great harm if it's called for. We know these weapons cut because they've cut us. With the aid of his nephew, Iolus, Hercules severed nearly every one of Hydra's heads. Their efforts would not work against the final head. No mortal weapon can harm it. Unfortunately, emotional and psychological scars don't heal as conclusively as physical wounds. Understand, so as long as we draw breath, the demons we contend with will always lurk in the corners of our mind. There's no discharge in this war. As a bonus, point 8 is connected to point 7. Hercules severed the immortal head with Athena's golden sword. For those of you so inclined, I suggest you take up a spiritual practice and seek aid from something higher than yourself. The human animal is not a logical creature. We're not even most logic. As men, we strive to be as logical as possible, but sometimes logic isn't enough. Hell, sometimes there's power in being irrational. Look at the powerful things our lovely ladies have done. Terrible, to be sure, but powerful. Religious practice can grant us a structured way to deal with emotions, while at the same time bolstering one's hope and optimism for the future. And optimism has been proven to increase one's quality of life. Just something to consider. In closing, I pray that each and every man fighting this fight against their personal Hydra stays in the fight. I pray anyone watching this were able to gain something useful in my ramblings. Because I'll be honest here, this was as much for me as it is for you, probably more so. I think that's it. I think I'm done for now. Till next time, gents. Have a good one.
Of reaching this golden year is it's a very flawed idea, because it's an idea that you're gonna work hard, but then you're gonna reach the finish line. But there's no finish line.
No.
It doesn't exist.
That's the scary thing about life, my friend.
That is a scary thing, right?
And
There
that's
is no-
what fatigues me. People go, man, why don't you ever smile? There's no fucking end, my friend. There's no
every
end.
day.
There's no end.